I'm Bryan Doreian. People in the crypto realms know me as Snappy or Snappy Snap. Back when I entered the crypto realms in 2011, 2012, steampunkish, right? Everybody had handles and monikers and pseudonyms. So somebody once said, "You're really snappy with things," and I just stuck with me. So I was like, "Oh, Snappy Snap." So that's carried along for the past 6 years. I'm today here with PIVX. PIVX stands for Private Instant Verified Transaction. It's a cryptocurrency that was announced in 2015, launched in 2016. So in crypto years, that's 100 years ago,
it's
right?
Like the grandpa of cryptocurrency businesses.
Absolutely. So it's a privacy-centric, community-centric cryptocurrency that I think is doing wonderful work in this realm of connecting people, as well as pushing the boundaries of technology. So,
interesting. Now, I'm curious what your role behind it is, and kind of how you came about it.
Sure. Yeah. PIVX is a DAO, right? So a decentralized autonomous organization, or a decentralized autonomous company, if you want to say that, corporation, community. So there are no official roles, if you think about it. Now we all have variations of what we do or skill sets. I could probably be seen as the unofficial face of PIVX, to a brand ambassador, to business development. That's probably the hats that I most wear. I've been doing YouTube videos, weekly updates for PIVX for the past year. I think there's about 120 of those that are out.
Wow, it's not that much.
Yeah. So there's a lot of content that's come out, keeping the community updated about what's going on internally in PIVX and then out to the world. And then as well as doing a lot of networking, doing alliances and forming strategic partnerships with individuals and companies. So
that's amazing. I feel like you're like in a vantage point to have a lot of conversations with a lot of interesting people in the space. I mean, well, what are some things that you've been picking up recently that intrigue you when you have conversations while you're networking and you're kind of doing your thing, so to speak, being snappy?
Yeah, so one thing that I'm finding so fascinating is seeing the waves. So seeing the cycles. I mean, for me, I believe so much of life is about energy and resonances and frequencies and vibrations. Having seen cycles and patterns of humans within this realm, it's no different than anything else. Like the tech boom, the .com eras, creating a wheel and then automobiles, whatever. You get to see human dynamics come out and play. So it's awesome, having been in for a while, to see, like, there's people coming up going, "I know nothing about blockchain, but I want to know."
Yeah.
Even a year and a half ago, that was rare for people to vocalize, "Oh, I'm curious about it," because it, for some reason, was scary. That tipping point in like the collective consciousness wasn't there yet.
Absolutely.
So,
what do you think that brought this collective consciousness to this point now? Then I'm curious if you have thoughts on that.
I'll say the term. I think it's velocity. So you have components of time. There's been enough time that's elapsed for people to understand it, communicate, build networks. Right. So we're networking, we're communities, have conversations,
let it crystallize, let it formulate a little bit, sure.
Bingo. So I think there's been enough of that matrix is allowing for the next wave of folks to really come in and begin to ask questions. And that's also part of your responsibility, my responsibility, of people. You can almost think of us as Sherpas, right? Whether you've been in for 2 months or 2 years, there's varying degrees that you have a responsibility, if you so choose, to have conversations with other people. The thing that I really appreciate is folks that can have transparent conversations.
Absolutely.
So you see the snake oil salesmen, you see the people pump and dump scams, and et cetera.
Yeah.
Find the folks that you resonate with and build relationships there, so that you can have the heart-to-heart and say, like, yeah, I don't know much about the code, but I can talk to you about all the marketing components. Or I know a ton about the code, but I don't really know about opening up. That's going to allow this industry and I think the human network to mesh and embrace the technology more.
Well, that's the thing, right, Bryan? So, like, in this space, there's so many new people. The velocity of people coming in is so great now, right? And you have all these services being sprung up. It's not just companies looking for, basically get crowdfunded. Now it's like marketing companies. Now you have, AML, KYC companies. There's so many coming in the space. Like, it's just, how does one, from a perspective of like working with cryptocurrency companies, how do you differentiate the bad actors from the good, right? How can you really tell that this person has a true vision right? This founder of this coin has a true vision for what their platform is. They have a true purpose for utility of that coin.
Yeah.
And it's very genuine, you know? Like, do you have a hard time being able to pick that apart? I feel like when you get to sit down with someone, you get to really know, but, you know, from face value, how can someone expect to really know that?
Yeah, great question, because 2 years ago, you could probably get a handle on the projects. You could find the time to go through and vet. I mean, there weren't, I mean, there was a lot, but there weren't that many. And now it's exponentially exploding. So it is becoming much more difficult and challenging for the individual user coming in that's blind to have any idea of where to go. So that being said, I think that also goes back to the responsibility of now you're seeing those organizations put together, oh, here's benchmarks, here's standards, here's our own reports on these coins. But again, they all come with biases. So at the end of the day, I would say, you know, if you're interested, do your own research. I mean, this is about decentralization anyway.
Absolutely.
If you want to know about a project or you think it's good, start asking questions. Ask a ton of questions. Go on crypto Twitter even, and you know, see what's the tone. How do they engage with community? How do they answer questions? Is there support or not? All of these things that we as individuals can do to get an idea of the project. Now, I think the hard jump though is, at the end of the day, unless you're a technologist and know coding, it's really hard to figure out, like, is this solid or not? So beginning to use trusted, vetted sources of, yes, this is solid code base, et cetera, it's gonna become part of your vocabulary if you want to remain as an individual investor, right, into this whole ecosystem. You know, my recommendations are see what the community is like, obviously. If you want to brave GitHub, go for it, but even then, you really better know what you're doing to look at code bases and talk to people, right? At the end of the day, all this text here, find people that you trust or can build relationships with, and then start to explore. I mean, if you think about it, Ethereum meetups started as a couple people getting together before there was Ethereum. It was, hey, we're talking about this technology, and all of a sudden you've got these ideas that spark because of a similar shared interest and resonance. Same thing, talk to neighbors, find folks that you trust, and then have the human connection.
It's very interesting because, you know, that's kind of like the landscape as we know it, you know, here and other places of, I guess, the developed like world where we're allowed to visit. But like what we're not seeing in person, at least for me personally, like I was just in the Philippines, I was just in Hong Kong, you know, we were just in Latin America, but most of the individuals that are in this space like aren't able to see truly the impact that this technology could have with the basically disintermediated people around the world. You know, so I guess like one of my questions for you, and this is a concern that we always face, is how do we communicate this in a way to people that live at this high standard of living, that there are people here that live here. You know, there are people in the world that live here, and you know, with this technology, they can be up here.
To use the once quoted, often quoted, to whom much is given, much is required. Pick your strain of religion, right? You'll hear the same things. If you have gifts, there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
So I think that what your statement for me that brings up is it behooves those who have information to, one, not think that we know what's best with the information, and as well be good stewards of it. So and I think that really comes back at a human level of having conversations. Right? We don't want to repeat the same capitalistic mindset that nations have had of imposing what we think is best on another country. Because perhaps, yeah, elements of this technology can be very useful, but implemented in a way that we think is best might be devastating.
Absolutely.
So having those heart-to-heart conversations at a human level first, using blockchain, distributed ledger technology as a tool, that's where it comes first. It's the heart-to-heart connection as a human level and seeing this thing as a tool, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a nail, okay, then the blockchain's a hammer it in. Yeah. But if it's a screw, you don't use the blockchain. You go find the screwdriver, or you then build the screwdriver using something. So absolutely, that's for me of, you know, we were talking off camera, maybe it was recording. My personal belief is that we're all connected. Humanity, and I've said this if you've seen one of my interviews, I believe humanity is the greatest experiment of decentralization ever. There's 7.5 billion individuals, all in our own meat suits, right? I'm in a meat suit.
Yeah.
The me is me, this is my body, but I'm in a meat suit, you're in a meat suit.
Yeah.
But we all share the same energy, we're all human and we all connect, right? We're decentralized in our form, but we're unified in our consciousness. I think the sooner that we embrace that and apply that and use these tools, we're gonna find and build and allow the next generations to have a world that we could never have dreamed of.
Yeah, and right now it seems so, from just a human to human perspective, it just seems so disparate, right? We seem very far apart, and we're not. So I think, yeah, that's another thing behind the messaging is this is a technology that literally will connect you with everyone in the world, like physically. Emotionally and spiritually, that's a completely separate story.
And that's up to us. That's up to us to say, do we mirror that as individuals?
I'd like to.
Yeah, I would too.
Amazing. So if there's, if there's anything that you wanted to touch on, I know you're working with PIVX, right? You said. Was there any other message you'd like to get across at this time?
So yeah, if you don't know much about PIVX, go to pivx.org, so PIVX.org. You can read all about it, or why PIVX. So that's a great little informational site as well. There's a lot of components that make PIVX what it is. From proof of stake to privacy, to governance models, how decisions are made, to the community that's around it, the support that it's doing, the donations. Again, you go on and on. So if you're interested, go get in the Discord as well. So the Discord is the technology where a lot of crypto projects tend to hang out. So go find our Discord, jump in, introduce yourself, get involved. If you're curious, and a lot of the community will jump out and help as well.
Awesome. It's just like you said, brother. It's all about asking the right questions, and rather just going out and asking questions in the right places. So without further ado, man, I really appreciate your time, Bryan Doreian.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.